guy Arianis directly quote unquote tells me this, and this is the whole topic. The whole topic is whether or not he put my site into question. He gives not an analogy. He basically tells me that there's some possible world equivalent to ours where we're all deluded, and so because we don't know whether or not I'm deluded or not, he can't take my site as a legitimate justification when I reaffirm that my site is the reason why I see this thing. Because I've reaffirmed multiple times that when I make a statement like, I see this thing, therefore this is this thing, until you point out otherwise, it's a self-justifying thing. My vision is self-justifying. Unless you point out, that's why he puts it into question. That's the issue that you're having here.
So during Jester's little rant, I had flashbacks pertaining to the schizophrenic retard I talked to 4 days ago. That was how retarded whatever the fuck he just said is. So basically, he didn't actually justify it in any way whatsoever how he did not beg the question. If anything, he just further substantiated my worldview. With respects to Arianis' analogy, he was basically saying that we can have possible worlds where the empirical content is equivalent. Let's say we have two possible worlds, possible world A and possible world B, and I want everyone in the VC to actually pay close attention. So if in both possible worlds I observe an apple on the table, right, there's no empirical symmetry breaker which determines whether I'm either experiencing a delusion or I'm not experiencing a delusion. So basically what he was trying to invoke is some level of Cartesian skepticism, which indicates that simply appealing to our empirical semens or intuitions does not really act as any substantive justification for any perceptual belief we have, right? Now, the whole time he was burden switching, he was asking Arianis, well, how would you prove that your site is reliable? Which isn't really the relevant part of the discourse. That's not the elephant in the room, right? The major point that we need to focus on is how exactly would you, Jester, justify your Siemens without appealing to your Siemens? If you appeal to your Siemens in in attempt of justifying your Siemens, that is begging the question, because what is in question is whether Siemens act as valid justifiers. That's how it works. If you think that the only way we can justify our Siemens,
No, I'm not
I'm
talking
not
to
done. Is that my finish? Is the time run out or something?
No, you can go ahead. You still have 30 seconds. Go
Oh
ahead.
yeah, I was just confused. Yeah, so I was just saying that yeah, if you think that the only means of justifying our empirical Siemens is by appealing to our empirical Siemens, when you're just blatantly wrong, Jester. I mean, you have transcendental arguments in metaphysics which establishes this without begging the question, like how T-Jump did, by the way. And there's even a short recording of him literally begging the question, and even agreeing that he begged the question. Said, "Sure, I don't care. I can post it in the moment." So yes, Jester, you can give a response now.
Okay, so to address the Giga Shock on that he gave me, he doesn't agree to saying he's begging the question. He's just telling him I don't care because what he was bringing up at the time was irrelevant. One, two, what you're bringing up is you're presupposing what it is begging the question. I've told you multiple times that vision is self, and that's the whole point that we got into, whether or not he was putting my site into question, which he is, which you just conceded he's trying to put my site into question, and then you run the possible worlds argument, and that there's some possible world that's equivalent to mine, which I already said, that we could possibly all be deluded. If you hold that position, then you can't make any inference on anything because we could all just be deluded. What I'm saying is that that's probably not the case, because if we all were deluded, we literally wouldn't be alive here right now. We wouldn't be debating on discord.com right now. So I'm going to ask you one question. How do you know whether or not we're debating right now on this topic if we're all possibly deluded? Like, how do you know? How can you infer to that?
So I like how he just committed like a weird burden switch. But at the first part, he didn't even respond to the part where I literally said and pointed out him begging. That's not even. I mean, you have different responses. You have Morian arguments. You have Hiller putting in semantic externalism arguments. You have transcendental arguments. You have different means of justifying an external world, or justifying what our intuitions most probabilistically indicate an external world, without appealing to our intuitions in the first place and viciously begging the question, right? So that's just wrong if you believe that we cannot make an inference and epistemic realist, right? So that's just blatantly wrong. And secondly, or rather thirdly, I should say, well, Jester, I guess this was what I said before, but I guess conspicuously demonstrate question, because when Jester was being asked to justify phenomenal conservatism, which is the view that empirical intuitions are reliable. He appealed to empirical intuitions to justify that, which quite literally assumes its reliability in the first place. That is begging the question. Likewise, if I ask someone to prove that Sukuna is better than Gojo, stronger than Gojo, and they literally say, well, Sukuna is stronger than Gojo because Sukuna has a higher strength than Gojo, that is uninformative. That's begging the question. So now, Jester, stop being the fucking idiot and give an actual intelligent response. Other than make
Okay,
a fucking
so
embarrassment.
you went ad nauseum on multiple occasions. You just you just repeat yourself pretty much. And I'll reply to Bucky's DM isn't thingies. Give me a second. The issue that you're having here, obviously you didn't answer the question that I give you about the inference and whether or not how could you infer. He uses global, and I'm going to specify. He uses global skepticism to try to put forth some type of defeater to my vision being a credible source of information to tell me the TV is in the room. They went over this multiple times in the debate. Is a TV in the room? I could tell you this TV is in the room by me seeing the TVs in the room. Obviously, he's running global skepticism, so he's going to put me being able to see the TV in the room into question. No, now, how does he put me being able to see the TV in the room into question? With the same possibility argument. He runs this possibility argument saying that we could all just be deluded, and I don't know whether or not I really see this TV or not. I'm going to just affirm that that's probably not the case. That's really highly unlikely, and the possibility of that being the case is horribly unlikely, which is why I can still run back and say I could infer something is the case through my vision, because we're not deluded, and it's really unlikely that we are deluded, because if everybody on Earth was deluded, we would literally not be alive, and we would not be on Discord.com right now. So the issue that you're having here is he's running this possibility argument to put my vision into question, but it fails because it doesn't defeat fucking anything. It's just horrible fucking skepticism.
Okay, so obviously you did not understand the intentionality behind the skepticism that he presented, right? So the skepticism that he presented isn't really defeating your position in the sense where it is showing why this falls. It is undercutting the justification for your position, meaning that it basically reduces the reliability for
Stop the timer.
Why are you
Wait,
interrupting me?
Apollo. Wait, I'm gonna explain. Wait. I'm not interrupting you. Can you mute the guy with the phone? I'm not interrupting you. Can you mute the guy? Stop the Apollo's timer. Mute the nigga with the phone. It's really annoying. Mute the nigga with the phone with a fucking Android. Okay, keep talking, Apollo.
It was Apollo's phone. Hold on.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'm looking out for it, but they shit stop, bro.
Yeah, no. I'm not interrupting you. I'm not interrupting Apollo. It's just that the nigga with the phone is getting on my nerves. He's going, like, turn your Android off, please, bro. Okay, go ahead, Apollo.
Yeah. Please just mute up. Yeah, go ahead, Apollo.
Oh, yeah. I was just saying that when you responded by saying that his skepticism doesn't defeat anything, I take that to be that you're trying to say that his skepticism doesn't debunk your view or it doesn't show a contradiction in your view, and that is fine. It doesn't need to do any of this, right? The purpose of the skepticism is to demonstrate why your view is gets unreliable. Rather, it doesn't have a positive epistemic value. Now, to elaborate on what I'm saying, all I mean is that there's no reason to believe that your view is more probable than not, based on the current justification that we have access to, right? That's just him undercutting the justification of your view. He doesn't have to debunk, nor does it have to show a contradiction in your view. Now, I obviously agree that there's an external world. It is more probable that we're not in a delusion. I grant these views. These views are common sense. However, what I don't grant is the way in which you attempt to justify these views, right? You justify these views by simply assuming the position that's in question. As I've already laid out multiple arguments, which quite literally makes an inference which justifies the reliability for intuitions without, right?
Yeah, there it is. Mute him. Okay, I got him. Go ahead.
Mhm.
There, I found his ass. Yeah, continue.
Yeah, I was saying that there are multiple arguments which justifies these common sense views without actually appealing to the same thing that's in question, like what TJM did or what you're doing currently. As I've already said, you have the Morin argument, you have the semantic externalism argument, you have the Morin shift, specifically, which is how Moore responded to the skeptics. And Hillary Putnam semantic externalism argument, and the transcendental arguments, right? And you can appeal to theoretical virtues, right? There are multiple different means of appealing, or rather justifying the specific view, without just simply saying that, well, what is in question, which is my intuitions, justifies my intuitions, which is just obviously begging the question. And if anyone doesn't even agree with this, they're just being blatantly delusional.
He's over 2 minutes, by the way. That's clear. Like, I'm sorry.
2 minutes. The timer's going off. You can go ahead, Jester.
Yeah. So he keeps attacking the intuition thing. I don't know why, and he talks about like this common sense arguments and these other ways to infer whether something is the case. But at the end of the day, we're talking about the discussion I had with Arianas. Arianas uses this specifically to put into question whether or not I can really see or not, and he pushes on this really heavily. And so what we're coming down to is I'm saying that I'm justified in seeing what I see because my vision allows me to project these images from our reality to my brain, so I'm allowed to, come to some type of conclusion that this is what it is. And now the position that T-Jump is holding, what I argue against Arianas, is that if I see this, I could describe it as this thing. I'm saying this is this thing until you point out otherwise. No problem with that. But then his counter to that is that, my seemings, my view, my sight is fallible. But, T-Jump's position covers that already. He's already saying it's possible I'm wrong. Point out what is wrong with what's happening here. He's saying that he points out something fallible in my vision. T-Jump's position is already covering that, which is why he asks, find a contradiction for me to say otherwise, for me to say why this isn't a TV. Instead of finding a contradiction, your buddy just says it's possible we're all deluded, and I'm saying that's all he uses as a defeater. That's all he tries to use as a defeater to my argument. I understand there's other ways of justifying whether something is there or not, but justifying it through sight is perfectly okay because it's probably the case that I can see and tell that this is a debate, that I'm on Discord. I could probably tell that I could see a TV, all of these things. And the only defeater he had to that was saying that I'm possibly deluded. Saying that I'm possibly deluded is not a real fucking defeater because that's so highly unlikely because we literally wouldn't exist. So unless you could tell me how through that type of view, through that type of world or possibility where we're all deluded, you could infer, if you accept that view, you could infer that we're even on Discord. Go ahead and tell me.
Okay, so you just had a horrible misinterpretation of Arianas' response, right? So in the first section of your little rant, you basically said that he was putting into doubt whether you can see. No, he was not, right? So he grants that you have the ability to see. He grants that you're having this phenomenal activity, this phenomenal activity of sight. But what he does not grant is whether this phenomenal activity accurately represents the extramental world. All that means is that, for example, like how the Puritan skeptics, they grant that we observe these like entities, they grant that we have these observations. What they don't grant is whether these observations indicate that there's a world outside of their mind or whether it is accurate. So for one, he was not putting into question your sight or you having the ability to see. He was putting into question whether the representations within your sight or within this mental, activity is accurate. That's what he placed into question. Now, to respond to the second part of your argument, right? T-Jump granted that it was fallible, but then T-Jump asked for a contradiction. That is not Arianas' burden. He doesn't have to establish a contradiction, right? What T-Jump has to do is explain why it is less likely for it to be wrong than for his view to be right, regardless of his fallibility, regardless of the fallibility that is embedded within his view. That's what he has the burden to establish, right? Think of it like this. I mean, a lot of fictional debaters can relate to this. If you have a scan, for example, and the scan is a statement within the scan, and there are two different interpretations that one can use to interpret the scan, right? I mean, the skeptic can just pose an interpretation, but they don't need to present a contradiction in the interpretation or within your interpretation, right? So long as you are on the positive and you need to establish why your interpretation is correct, and you granted that your interpretation is possibly false, you need to show why it is more likely than not that your interpretation is true. And the same logic applies here. It's just basic common sense, Jester. Now give a response.
Yeah, I've already established multiple times. Yeah, I know he's running a skeptic stance, and within even T-Jump's position, he's saying that he could possibly be wrong. So the whole thing that this is, I'm saying that you running this possible worldview on me, I've already explained multiple times how it's probably the case and how highly unlikely it is that everybody on the planet is fucking deluded because we would all be dead. Can you respond to that?
Oh, wait, that was only not my bad. What were you saying?
Okay. I'm saying that I've already pointed out how my position of sight, and I'll address this too because you actually made 2 points there. You said that he's not putting my sight into question again. But the issue that you're having here is
You're
that...
a little bit off.
No. He said, you're saying that he's not putting my sight into question. He has to be, because I'm saying that my sight, me being able to see something, is, it justifies in itself me being able to see something. He has to put that into question, or he's not attacking my position. And so when you say that I have to prove like this is more probable than this other reality, I have, because if the other reality was even likely at all, we would all be dead and we wouldn't be on Discord right now. So how the fuck are we on Discord right now debating if that's even probable?
Well, for one, I guess when you say we'd all be dead, that's just an extreme reach, right? For example,
we would all be dead if we were all deluded. That's
there are
just
several
the case.
times. There are several times where science has confirmed that we have a bit of optical illusions. Like, for example, light plays tricks in our visual faculties. Like, for example, if you study the refraction of light and like the mirage, for example, optical illusions has been confirmed within the field of science. But just because we have illusions or we're deluded with respect to what or I guess vision represents, right? That doesn't indicate that we are dead, right? Simply because it's like accepting that we're deluded doesn't lead to the conclusion that we would be dead. We could be alive, but within this specific life, we have a wrong interpretation of the world that we live in, and that doesn't extrapolate to us being dead. That's just a weird reach, right? Now I think that was the only point you made. Or rather, you may have made another point, but when you repeat your position, I may be able to respond to that.
Okay. So here's the issue that you're having here. So the example of delusion that he's giving me is saying that when I'm looking at something in a room, I literally can't tell what it is. Not some, because I understand there's optical illusion. I understand that the people in this world can actually, properly represent what colors are, like is a refraction of light. I understand things like that, but it still allows us to follow and be able to progress through the real world and do things, right? It's not impeding us in any sort of way. The delusion that your friend is referring to is me literally not being able to see something or tell what something is. Right, he's saying I'm completely deluded. My sight is malfunctioning. It's fallible. Like my sight is like not working. If my sight is fallible, if I can't tell what is in front of me, we literally wouldn't be able to exist, and we literally wouldn't be able to have this conversation on Discord.com right now. Do you not understand?
Oh yeah, he didn't say that, by the way. He didn't make the whole debate you guys had. I was listening the entire time. The whole time he was not making any form of affirmative claims. He didn't say that your side is. He never said to you, Jester, your side is deluded, or
I never said that.
He never said. Yeah, he was saying this. Yeah, it's very important for it to clarify, right? Because it can give others a wrong, a wrong interpretation.
Well, I've said it
right.
multiple times.
So he said it is possible that your side is deluded or is wrong, right? Mm-hmm. And afterwards, you granted this possibility, and now all he was asking for was for some probability increase in proof, some proof which raises the probability of your view, your opinion, your claim to be true.
I just told you.
That was all he asked for. Wait, hold on. That was all he asked for, right? And simply, all he did was just appeal to what was in question, which is the site itself, to justify the site itself.
So you agree that the site
wasn't.
So you agree site is in question.
And then wait, hold on. I didn't interrupt
you. Conceded.
Right? Yeah, so I didn't interrupt you, and that's your own opinion, which is obviously wrong.
That's my fault. I interrupted you. Go ahead.
But anyway, yes. Anyway, simply interrupting someone by saying they conceded is not a good argument. It's not persuasive. So anyway, I'll just get back to my point. Now back to what I was going to say. Right, the fact that you appealed to what was in question to prove that the claim, your position, is something which establishes that it is not probability increasing. You have not presented any form of good evidence. That was bad evidence, right? Begging the question fallacy is bad evidence, right? Anyone can grant this. If you ask someone to prove a position and they simply reaffirm the position, and they even grant that they reaffirm the position, how would that raise the probability of that being true? You also said that it was justificatory. I guess you said it was self-justificatory, right? My apologies. And I don't see how that would even be a good reason to believe in your position, because you can apply that to simply any belief of the matter. You can say that we're in a delusion because that's self-justified. It doesn't solve anything. It results in an impasse.
Okay, ready up? You set the timer?
Yeah, bro. Go ahead.
You can go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, Apollo didn't address anything I said at all. I understand that it's possible. I agree that it's possible. He asked me to find something that's probability increasing to show why my view is more probable than that possibility that he threw at me to, point out some problems with my view. And I said, that's perfectly okay. But I've pointed out that, and we already went over the semantics of how bad or what type of delusion was Arianus in reference to. He was talking about like light refraction and stuff like that. I'm not talking about like optical illusions. I'm talking about delusions or being deluded to the point where you literally can't progress as a human. Like you have no sight. Like your sight is fallible. Like your sight doesn't work. That's the possibility he's asserting. He's saying that if I'm in a room and I'm looking at something, I think it's a TV, it could be completely not there, and I'm completely deluded, and I'm like in a trance. Basically, that's what he's basically implying. That's what he's basically saying too. So he's not talking about some delusion where like I'm having like optical illusions and maybe like I see something one time. No, he's basically saying like I'm incapable of seeing. This possibility is really highly unlikely. I've asserted why it's highly unlikely multiple times, because if everybody on the planet was just as deluded as this, we would not be able to progress at all, and we wouldn't be here. So it's more probable that I'm capable of seeing perfectly fine and telling you that we're on Discord.com right now, and it's probably the case that we are on Discord.com right now having this debate. I could infer this through my site, seeing the app Discord.com open my computer, right? And him pointing forth that we're all possibly deluded and can't infer from sight at all is completely wrong. And you can't prove why that's more probable than my position. It's horrible. It's horrible skepticism.
Okay, so to respond to what you said a while ago, so for one, I agree with you with the view that phenomenal conservatism is probable. What I don't agree with you is your evidence for justifying this probability, right? Just like how, for example, two persons can both agree that, I guess, Goku beats Naruto, but they don't agree with how one approaches that particular opinion and proving it. I don't grant your evidential approach to proving that position. It was bad evidence. And again, to respond to your other part, what you said that the optical illusion part was kind of disanalogous. No, it was not, right? Because what he was saying, for example, when you have an optical illusion, you're deluded in some sense. You're having a delusion, right? So, for example, a mirage example, when you look down at the bottom of the road in sunlight, for example, it's going to appear that there's a puddle at the bottom of the road. That's your sight. That's what you're seeing currently. That's what you think. That's what your sight indicates. However, that doesn't actually exist, right? And the same thing can be applied to particularly everything, right, that we observe, right? For example, whether there's an apple on the table, etc., right? Now, I do in fact agree profoundly that it is more probable than not that we're on Discord. That's obvious, right? However, I don't agree with how you justify this belief. You just say, well, it is justified in virtue of my sight. I mean, that just blatantly begs the question. Again, I have laid out several different means of justifying that position. I mean, the Morin response, the semantical externalism response, etc. And even Arianas blatantly has said in the debate that you can draw inferences, you can use modus ponens to establish the reliability for perception or to justify these perceptual beliefs, or even phenomenal conservatism in a nutshell, right? So I don't think you've actually responded to one specific thing, which I think is the major thing in question, which is how exactly is reaffirming the position not begging the question? How exactly can you assume the conclusion but not be begging the question?
Okay. So I say I can see this thing. I see this as a TV. And so I make the statement that this is a TV, right? You tell me, why is this a TV? Or why do you think this is a TV because of your sight? And me reaffirming that my sight is a valid way of telling you this is a TV is self-justifying, because my sight and whether I can see or not, is self-justifying because of the way sight works. You put that into question whether or not it is self-justifying, right? So you're going to put it into question whether it is self-justifying, which is what Arianas did. Arianas puts it into question. He puts into question my sight, whether it's self-justifying or not, then tells me through global skepticism that this could possibly be the case. I'm telling him that probably, and you even admitting that, probably his possibility that he points at me to try to point out some problems of my position is really highly unlikely, so I don't even have to entertain it. I've already proven why me having my sight and why me being able to draw inferences from my sight and why I'm able to see is more probable than everybody being deluded. And you keep talking about the optical illusions and all these other things like mirages, which are completely irrelevant to the type of analogy or the type of example that Ariana's made, to where everybody's completely deluded to where they can't see anything. So you absolutely said absolutely nothing. I've already explained multiple times why my sight is self-justifying, while me being able to see is self-justifying. It's not question begging. You're basically doing the equivalent of saying that you're basically doing the equivalent of trying to tell you to justify the law of identity. Like, it's just ridiculous. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, here's the problem though. When you say you've already proven that your sight was probability increasing, you have to be very careful with that term, because all you did was simply reaffirm your sight in the attempt of justifying your sight. I don't see how saying that something is self-justified is even I don't see how that's informative. I don't see how that raises the probability of any form of belief whatsoever. I mean, you can apply that to particularly any belief that we have. Like, for example, why is it the case that, for example, Ronaldo is a better sportsman than Michael Jordan? Oh, because it's self-justifying, or
That's
because it just
disanalogous,
seems to be
but
the
I'm
case.
sorry.
I don't think it's disanalogous. I think in both cases we have a particular belief, and both persons approach that, I guess,
Do
justify
you have a
that belief
timer,
by
Junior?
just saying it's self-justifying. That's uninformative.
Hmm?
Now, again, with the laws of
Are
logic
you running the
part,
timer?
that's disanalogous. No, I'm not finished. Actually, you can wait. You can wait a chance to actually
Oh, you
rant
have a
on,
minute
right?
and 15, Apollo.
Okay, keep going.
What you said?
You
You
have
have
a
a
minute and
minute and
15.
Excuse me?
15.
Okay, so as I was gonna say, yeah, the laws of logic part was disanalogous because with the laws of logic, that's just the bar we establish for justification as a whole. Justification in itself is embedded within the logos, right? That's the bar we use to determine whether something is justified or is not justified. But that's not the case with perception, right? Perception is not the bar for justification, so it's not something that we would just accept as a background belief. That will be a foreground belief, right? So you have to understand the background foreground distinction within our belief system before reaching to the conclusion that the laws of logic the laws of logic situation would be analogous to asking someone to justify their perception, which is not the case, because laws of logic is the bar for justification, the perception is not, right? So give a response.
Okay. Yeah, perfect. The reason, so you brought up a Cristiano Ronaldo analogy that was completely disanalogous because when you talk about the best in soccer, it has to do with other variables outside, like statistics and performances against each other in these games. That has nothing to do with how your site works. If you could see, it's in itself that you can see, like you're able to project these images back to your brain, right? There's like like the reason that you could see is that you could see your brain functions, your eyeballs to be able to project images back to you to be able to process what's happening in our real reality. That's how it works. It is self-justifying whether you could see or not. Now, if you're putting into question whether I can see or not, right? Because I'm already presupposing that I can see. If you're putting into question that I can't see, right? That's a different story. So you're saying that I can't see, or he's saying that it's possible that I can't see. I'm saying my position is more probable. So the problem that you're having here is that when I put forth that I could see this thing, and when I see this, when I do see this thing, I state that this thing is this thing, and then you go and say that it's possible that I'm deluded. That's not really an argument because I've already showed you the probability increasing portion of it, which is it's really highly unlikely, and it's highly likely that I can see. If it's really probable that I can see, that I have vision, that I'm able to point out things in my reality, that's probable, then there's no issue with my view of saying I point out this thing to be this. If I'm wrong, point out why I'm wrong. There's no issue with that position. Wait,
Okay,
before you go,
so
real quick, let me open my door for my dog. Before you start, real quick, let me open my door.
oh, okay, good.
Go out. I'm back. Go ahead.
Okay. By the way, tell your dog I say hi, okay? But anyway, to respond to the last part you were
Hilarious.
saying, you basically did not really respond to what I said. I mean, no one is actually putting into question the fact that you have the ability to see. We grant this view, right? We grant that you have the ability to see. We grant that you have some vision faculties. What we don't grant as of now is whether what you observe is actually representative of the external world, right? What we're basically including is the possibility of this just being all in your mind and it's not actually representing something which actually exists. That's what's being placed in question. The quality is not what's being placed into question. And for the first part of your response, you talked about the Cristiano Ronaldo being disanalogous. No, it's not. I mean, I was not saying that we can't determine who is a better footballer between Ronaldo and Messi, for example, by appealing to statistics or whatever. What I was saying is that to say that simply that I guess phenomenal conservatism is true in virtue of intuitions, which assumes phenomenal conservatism and is self-justified, is just the same as saying that Ronaldo is better than Messi in virtue of Ronaldo being a better footballer than Messi and it being self-justified. It just assumes a conclusion. It is uninformative. It is unsubstantive. It does not add anything. Just like how in the Ronaldo example, whereas you can prove that Ronaldo is better than Messi by using statistics and not beg the question, You can also do the same with perception or phenomenal conservatism by appealing to, again, transcendental arguments, Morian arguments, semantic externalism arguments, and multiple different arguments, which solves these skeptical, I guess, problems or issues within epistemology. So in both cases, you can appeal to different standards without simply just blatantly assuming the conclusion, right? That's what I was pretty much saying to you, right? So I'd like a response now.
Okay. He's saying we grant you could see, but I'm putting into question whether or not your vision is telling you what's actually in the external world. So he's saying, I grant you can see, but I'm putting into question whether you can see or not. Because the literal definition for being able to see is to perceive with the eyes and to be able to discern things visually. If you can't discern things visually or perceive anything correctly, you can't discern or perceive, just a complete fabrication, then you can't see. Like, that's just the case, right? What I'm talking about is me being able to see and discern things. If I'm able to see and discern things, I'm able to tell you what this thing is. You're putting into question me even being able to discern something. But the problem with this possibility is just ridiculous because, again, Arianis uses something that's just highly unlikely, and you haven't proven why. And again, you keep saying that it's probable that I could see, but you put in question and you run the same type of skepticism that Arianis runs, which is useless. So the issue that you're having here is that either you attack whether what I said about my vision being more probable than the delusion theory, or you just lose. Because if I prove it's probable and I'm perfectly able to see and discern things, then my vision is a self-justifying thing. That's why he's putting it into question. So can you respond to that directly?
Oh, yeah. So repeat the last part. I was zoning out a bit.
Okay. So I'm saying, I say my vision is self-justifying. He puts that into question by running global skepticism, right? I tell him and I point out multiple ways how my view is more probable than the skepticism he presents. So the issue that you're having here, to be able to say that my vision isn't something that's self-justifying, which is what I'm saying, that my vision is self-justifying, I could appeal to my vision because it's probably the case, it's credible, right? You'd have to discern as to why my vision is not credible, and I've already pointed out why his possibility is
okay. I can give
horribly
a
unlikely.
response.
The question I'm asking here, like, why is what I'm saying not probable?
So what he said verbatim is that the reason as to why we can accept my vision as a valid justifier is because my vision is credible. Now the thing is, that has yet to be hashed out, right? So you have to hash out the credibility of the vision, right? So when you say that your vision is a valid, I guess, justifier, you're already assuming that it is credible. And then by justifying that by saying it is credible is basically just reiterating the view that's in question, right? So again, right, you cannot hash out the credibility of your vision by simply just appealing to your vision as a justifier. I've already given multiple different alternatives which are much better than than what T-Jump was doing, right? Which was basically just reiterating this position, which is phenomenal conservatism. Again, I just don't simply understand how someone, right, who's listened to this, or even you, for example, can honestly think that simply reiterating your view in attempt of justifying that position is a valid argument. It is not a valid argument. It's called a proof by assertion fallacy, or begging the question, or commits epistemic circularity. It's obviously circular, right? It does not add any form of informative basis for the conclusion which is in question. Again, it's just the same as saying that this player is better than this other player because it's self-justified. It's just basically, it's justified in virtue of itself. I mean, it does not add any form of informative justification that the person is asking for. And again, you keep on saying that the skepticism that he presents is not an argument. I agree with you. It is not supposed to be an argument, right? Skepticism in itself is not. Wait, hold on. It's not supposed to be an argument, nor which establishes the falsehood of your position. It is supposed to be something which undercuts the justification of your position, meaning that it basically puts your position into question and put it into such a sticky situation where we don't have any reason into accepting your position due to lack of good or relevant evidence which could raise the probability of your position. So no, he doesn't need to show a contradiction. He doesn't need to show why position is less probable. The only thing he needs to do is show why, based on our current evidential status, we can never determine whether the position is the most probable. So make a response now.
Okay. As again, he's running around and not really addressing what I'm saying. Let me close my door. Okay, I'm back. Yeah, again, he's running around and he's not really addressing the point that I make about, me pointing out how my position is more probable than the delusion theory, and if the delusion theory is what he's using to point out the issue within my position to say that, you can't really say that you could see and then say that it's self-justifying. If you're arguing for Arianus, all Arianus is saying, when I respond, it's my vision is self-justifying, because the vision or sight is what we use to infer the things around us, right? And so through that, which is why I say that is self-justifying. Now, if my vision is not self-justifying, he points out that we can all just be in a delusion, which is why I can't re-appeal to my vision. I point out why that's completely false. Well, that's not it's not even more probable than what I'm pointing out. He's pointing out something that I've said multiple times is so highly unlikely that we don't even have to entertain it. So you're not really responding to me at all when I point out the issues in Arianus' position multiple times, because he puts it into question, I reaffirm it, I say it's self-justifying. He goes and says, well, it can't be because of this global skepticism, interglobal skepticism. I attack the global skepticism by saying, this is highly unlikely. I show why my position is more probable. And so when I show my position is more probable, I defeat the global skepticism, because I showed something that was probability increasing by completely defeating the skepticism and showing why it's fucking ridiculous. So when I showed something why my view was probability increasing, and I met your criteria, I met your goalpost, you really just have to show me where I didn't point out that my view was more probability increasing, or where I failed to point that out.
Jester, I think you're being stubborn on purpose. Dude, that's the problem. He's not affirming the position, right?
I'm not saying he is.
You said that his position is flawed, so you're basically saying he has a position. He doesn't have a position.
I said he's running global skepticism on me. I said it 3 times. Stop strawmanning me.
No need to interrupt.
I said he's running global skepticism 3 times.
Moderation.
Holy crap.
Hold on.
You can moderate. Go ahead.
Let him finish.
Make it fair, okay? So as I was going to say, you said on multiple occasions that he has a position, his position is flawed. The thing is, he doesn't have a position. He's just simply calling into question your view, right? If you didn't know, Arianus actually grants phenomenal conservatism to some extent. He just does not grant the way in which T-Jump and you specifically approached the situation when being asked to prove phenomenal conservatism, which is a form of begging the question. So again, reiterating the view does not actually add any form of information or any substantive basis for that view, and you granted on multiple occasions. You and T-Jump simply just said that my side is justified in virtue of itself to justify your side. That is not good justification. And if guys think I'm riding, I'm not riding. I mean, they're literally legitimate arguments to prove that your perception is true or reliable without using the trash justification that Jester and T-Jump is currently using, right? There are much better ways, and I've laid them out on multiple occasions. And Arianus, in his debate, literally said to you that you can draw inferences or make inferences to justify this specific worldview, right? So again, I needed to establish to me how exactly is your view probability raising if all you're doing is saying that it is self-justified, it is true in virtue of itself, or my vision is justified in virtue of my vision, which is just begging the question. I've given several examples on this, right? The Sukuna example, for example, how can you say that, for example, Sukuna beats Gojo because I think that Sukuna beats Gojo, or that Sukuna beats Gojo because he has the ability to beat Gojo? That's just reiterating the view in different words. That's not informative. Right, you can't reiterate a view and think that's good justification. It doesn't raise the probability of anything. And if you think that Arianus has to present a contradiction or a debunk, like an explicit debunk to your position, for your position to be correct or wrong, that's just not the case, right? All you need to do is explain why your position has no form of good evidence, which is going to put your position into such a doubt whereas you can't affirm your position to be epistemically reliable or more reliable than the contrary view.
Okay. I'm going to explain this since he keeps going ad nauseum and basically repeating the same garbage Arianus is spouting. So I'm going to address him, right? If he puts into question my view, and I tell him my view, and I want everybody to listen, this is the exchange. I tell him my view is self-justifying because my vision justifies in itself that I'm capable of seeing. To defeat that, he has to put it into question, right? I tell him he runs global skepticism. I never even directly said he's running some position. I'm saying that he's running global skepticism. He's being a skeptic, so he's pointing out an issue of my position. Okay, perfectly fine. He's pointing out an issue with my position. He's saying that we could all be deluded, we could all be stupid, retarded, like everybody could just be like not seeing anything, right? Okay. I say that's highly unlikely So you just pointing out something that's just possible, some random possible world, doesn't lower the probability of my position. I'm saying that I could probably see. It's probably the case that I can see. So I'm going to rely on my position. I'm going to reaffirm that I can see, and it's perfectly okay. So me reaffirming that I can see while saying that's probably the case that I can see, right? And saying that I can rely back on my own sight to say whether something is there or not, and you just putting forth a possibility is not anything. You haven't gotten anywhere. You haven't pointed out any real problem in my position that it's open to the possibility of being wrong. Like, he's not doing shit. Like, he didn't do anything impressive at all.
Okay, so for one, you misinterpreted my approach and Aaron's approach. Neither of us thinks that simply approaching or positing the possibility of you being deluded establishes your view being unreliable. What we use as reason to believe that your view is epistemically unreliable is the fact that you have no good evidence, no evidence which is non-circular, which establishes the truthiness of your view. That's what we use to establish the epistemic unreliability of your view, not the fact that it's just merely possible that you could be in an illusion, right? We don't believe that in any way undercuts your view, right? What we believe is the fact that you have not given any good evidence, which does not beg the question, to establish the truthiness of your view. Now, the second part, you, Gelajin, and another person keeps on misrepresenting my view. Neither of us is questioning whether you can see. That's not being called into question. We grant this. We're not asking you to prove that you have the ability to see. What we're asking you to prove is whether what you are in fact seeing as of now is representing the actual world, is representing a world which exists beyond your mind. That's what I'm asking you to prove, right? So I don't appreciate the continuous misinterpretation, right, and the continuous derails, which does not address nor efficiently progress this dialectic at all. I'm not asking you to demonstrate that you can see. We're not doubting this. So don't, I don't know why you keep on reiterating that irrelevant detail, right? What we're asking you to demonstrate is why it is more likely that what you're currently seeing is in fact representing the actual world. And you keep on, I guess, baselessly asserting that it is more likely, right? And I mean that asseveration has no basis, right? I mean, you just keep on saying it is more likely in virtue of the fact that it just seems based on the same thing which is in question that it is more likely. Again, that is uninformative. And I've said that multiple times that you can use inferences to actually raise the probability of this view without begging the question. Ariana said the exact same thing with respect to the modus ponens shit, right? So there are several means of actually raising the probability without using that trash ass justification that T-Jump was using, right? And to say that something is self-justified can be, I guess,
that's
applied
2
to particular
minutes.
every belief. But I mean, I don't want to continue ranting. I don't want to
Guys,
rant
that's
for
2
too long.
minutes.
So you
That's
make a
That's 2
response.
minutes. Do y'all want to go to conclusion? This shit kind of ad nauseum, but
It's horrible, but I'm gonna address the points he just shot at me when he talks about this position right here. Hold on, let me get it right here before we start the timer. I just wrote this down. Give me a second. Okay. So again, he rambles on the same thing. He talks about that he's not pointing out an issue with my sight, but then contradicts himself, saying that I can't perceive things. That he's saying I can't see anything external of my mind. If I can't see anything external of my mind, that means that I cannot see. In the context that we're using sight, that means that I cannot actually tell whether or not there is a TV in front of me, which is the problem that he's pointing out. That means that I can't see. So he's pointing out an issue of my position, implying that I cannot see. It's possible that I cannot see. So what about that makes my position more probable? That's the problem that he's pointing out. That you're just completely misconstruing everything to fit your weird little narrative. So I've pointed that out multiple times. Again, if I say that my sight in itself, if I'm capable of seeing, that in itself, it's self-justifying as evidence to whether or not there's a TV there, which it is self-justifying, and I've said it multiple times. He has to put into question whether or not it's self-justifying. Now, the way he puts it into question is running that little garbage, and we could go to conclusions after this because it's just going ad nauseum. You're not really addressing. I pointed out multiple times how it's probability increasing. When I say it's self-justifying, he has to put that into question, and the way he puts it into question is horrible. I've already fucking deleted it. It's horrible. He has nothing. So you're not really responding to me. You're just saying a bunch of like jargon and babble. So we could conclude. You just fucking lost again. So I'm sorry.
If you think the only thing I can say is jargon, then you're delusional. I can just put it very simply.
You're in a world
You
of like
just
that
say,
you don't
wait,
even
hold on,
understand.
shut up. So anyway, The other thing he said is, my position is true because it's self-justified. You can apply that same logic to particular any belief, and nobody can ever prove anything. And we have
You
several
can't prove
advances.
why Arianas
It's
won that exchange.
uninformative. You can say the same logic for every single thing. See, that's how trash your justification is. Now conclusions. That's my whole point.
You want to go to conclusion?
Our first.
Perfect. I'm good to go.
Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah. We came in here talking about the debate that we had, that I had against Arianas. And again, he can't point out why Arianas won this exchange. So I've already pointed out multiple things in this problem. I say, right, I have this view. He's like, why is this view the case? I'm saying because the view justifies in itself. It's self-justifying. He puts into question whether the view is self-justifying or not. The way he puts into question whether the view is self-justifying or not fails. So he has nothing to really stop me from saying that it's self-justifying. So he just fucking lost.
So a lot of persons, including Jester, misconstrues my position. Now, for one, I obviously grant phenomenal conservatism. I'm not some word skeptic. However, when you try to justify your perception or the reliability for perception by using your perception, that's where I'm going to disagree with you on, right? That's not good justification. It doesn't raise the probability of phenomenal conservatism. And for persons who would agree with Jester, the thing is this, right? I mean, there are different ways, again, I've said the arguments, there are different means of justifying the reliability for perception. I've laid out the arguments on multiple occasions. Simply begging the question is not good evidence, and that is universally granted in logic, right? It just does not beg the question. It just does not raise the probability of any theory or exponents, right? Now, with respect to Jester's position, Jester keeps on misrepresenting not only my position but Arianas' position as just us questioning our ability to see. Again, we're not questioning your ability to see. We grant that you can see. We grant that you have sight. What we don't grant is whether your sight accurately represents the world. And I mean, just in virtue of the fact that there are optical illusions that exist, we know that our sight can be fallible, and you grant the fallibility for sight, right, or for sight as a whole. Now, the thing is, so long as you grant the fallibility of our sight, it is not the skeptic's burden to debunk your position or show a contradiction. It is your burden to show why it is more likely than not that your sight is accurate. And simply saying that your position is self-justified does not raise the probability of your sight being reliable, and it does not raise the probability of any theory whatsoever. Now, again, he literally grants that he reaffirmed his position. He did not even respond, or did not even deny that he reaffirmed his position, or even say that it was just merely self-justified. Right? I explained why simple saying that something is self-justified to prove a position is uninformed if it begs a question. You can say that about literally anything, and there be no informative debate whatsoever. In a Naruto versus Goku debate, both persons can say, "Well, my view is self-justified."
Y'all can end the recording now.
Yeah, we just have to listen to another broke Jamaican who makes $7K a year ramble on a bunch of garbage again. Like, that's ridiculous, bro. That's ridiculous. That's so crazy. Like, this guy, bro. The fact that you even defend the Arianas guy is ridiculous to me. The fact that you like deride another guy virtually on Discord.com.